wal-Marjan. فيما اتفق عليه الشيخين. Right, I sent them. Pearls and corals. Or that which al-Bukhari Muslim agreed about. Sent. Then we have hadith Abi Hurairah. Right, what's hadith Abi Hurairah? Who memorized the hadith Muhammad? Who memorized the hadith by heart in Arabic? مأمون تفضل.
حديث أبي هريرة قال رسول
رضي الله عنه
قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم إذا دخل شهر رمضان فتحت أبواب السماء وغلقت أبواب جهنم وسلسلت الشياطين.
أحسنت جزاك الله خير. أحسنت. Anyone else? حديث
عن أبي هريرة رضي الله عنه.
حديث أبي هريرة.
حديث عن أبي هريرة رضي الله عنه.
حديث
عن
حديث أبي هريرة. To say عن other times is correct, proper. However, here from this book, what is our rule in our class on the fast?
Take what you get from the book.
No, that's not the rule. What's the rule?
You give back what you've been given.
Give back what you've been given. Nothing else. Follow. Hadith
أبي هريرة رضي الله عنه قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم إذا دخل شهر رمضان فتحت أبواب السماء وغلقت أبواب جهنم وسلسلت الشياطين.
أحسنت جزاك الله خير. جيد. Well, one more. 3 is the sunnah. Can we get an odd number? إن الله وتر يحب الوتر. We get an odd number.
حديث أبي هريرة رضي الله عنه قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم إذا دخل شهر رمضان فتحت أبواب السماء وغلقت أبواب جهنم وسلسلت الشياطين.
أحسن جزاكم الله خير. حديث أبي هريرة قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم إذا دخل شهر رمضان فتحت أبواب السماء وغلقت أبواب جهنم وسلسلت الشياطين. Hadith narrated by Abu Hurairah, the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, when the month of Ramadan comes, the gates or the doors of heaven are open, the gates of the hellfire are shut, and the devils are chained down. We said, Salahuddin, Sheikh, this hadith is agreed upon by Bukhari and Muslim. So every single Muslim, brother and sister tonight, inshallah, please try your best to memorize the hadith even in English. Go home, tell your family about it. Your wife, your husband, your mother, your brother, your co-worker, even non-Muslims. Go home and tell them this. In this land, we have a tradition, the statement of the Prophet that says 3 things. 3 things. 3 points. Every single Muslim can memorize these 3 points. When Ramadan comes, as soon as Ramadan comes, gates of paradise are open, gates of hell are shut, and the devils are locked down. In other words, it's an opportunity. As Azar mentioned before he left, it's an opportunity. And the smart man, the wise man, especially one who's business-minded, he knows opportunities always don't present themselves a second time. There's no man who's a wise, successful businessman, except that instantly when the thing happens, he jumps right on it, pounces on it. Because there's no guarantee the opportunity will come a second time. And a businessman, when he drives down the street, what is he thinking about? Money. He sees people walking down the street with dollar signs on their heads. And oh, this is a nice building, this is a nice park, this is a nice store, this is a nice masjid, mashallah. But the businessman is thinking money. How can I make money off this masjid? How can I make money off this building? What can I turn this corner property into? He doesn't go down south just because the air is clean and fresh. He thinks about money down south. So the Muslim is supposed to think about ajr, reward, good deeds, knowledge. How can I get closer to Allah? And it allows about the month of Ramadan is considered a gold mine. But you have to take some efforts. It's going to take some digging. You have to mine a little bit. You have to take a step or two to get to the goal. So this is a magnificent hadith that's totally authentic. That shows us that Allah Azza wa Jalla loves for slaves to come close. Allah loves to put his slaves into paradise. And for that reason, he gives them an entire month, which he gives them, or he hands them an opportunity that's matchless. Can't lose. No demons running around. Doors of the hellfire shut. Doors of paradise open. Only a wretched man, a wretched woman, will allow a 30 or 29-day month to come and go without forgiveness. In Allah God, as it stated in another hadith, that is something like that, different over its authenticity. It says, wretched is a man whom Ramadan comes upon him and he's not forgiven. Wretched is a man who has his two parents alive and he's not forgiven. In other words, it's a major opportunity with your parents. Well, everyone can do a good service to their parents. Give them some sadaqah, help them out, say a good word to them, even if they're not Muslim. But to disrespect your parents, disobey them, not treat them in a kind, lofty manner, shows that you're a miserable person. And similarly, we say 29 to 30 days you have to get your act together, or at least get forgiven of some of your past sins. And you don't take advantage of it? Something's wrong. Something's serious wrong. Hadith. The next hadith, follow.
باب وجوب صوم رمضان لرؤية الهلال والفطر لرؤية الهلال، وأنه إذا هم في أوله أو آخره أو أكملت عدة الشهر 30 يوما. حديث عبد الله بن عمر رضي الله عنه أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم ذكر رمضان فقال: لا تصوموا حتى تروا الهلال ولا تفطروا حتى تروه فإن هم عليكم فاقدروا له.
Hadith number 653. The author, Sheikh Muhammad Fuad Abdul-Baqi, Allah mercy on his soul, he mentions the chapter Bab Wujubi Sawmi Ramadan li Ru'yat al-Hilal, that it's obligatory and incumbent for you to fast on Ramadan when you see the crescent moon. Wal-Fitr li Ru'yat al-Hilal, and the obligation of breaking one's fast upon seeing that. And whenever it's cloudy, or you don't have the ability to actually physically see the moon, you complete the month of Sha'ban, 30 days. Narrated Abdullah ibn Umar radiyallahu anhuma, the Messenger of Allah mentioned Ramadan. He then said, do not fast until you see the moon, nor should you break your fast until you see it. If it's cloudy or if it's unclear skies, فَقْدُرُوا لَهُ, then pre-estimate it. Then estimate the month, yani Sha'ban. Once you reach a full 30-day month of Sha'ban, it's officially Ramadan. This hadith is agreed upon by Bukhari and Muslim, and we can take in brief the following benefits. The first benefit is the obligation of fasting in the month of Ramadan. Fasting in the month of Ramadan is obligatory, and this is the dalil. Many of us, we know the pillars, most of us, all of us, alhamdulillah, we know the pillars of Islam. But if someone asks you, what's the proof that you have to pray from the sunnah? Some of us will say, well, it's known, Sheikh Fulan, give me one hadith, yahi. One hadith that you must. And this is one here. And the student of knowledge, the successful student of knowledge, the strong student of knowledge, is the one who compiles his proofs and evidences. Okay? Because when you're talking about giving someone dawah, you're talking about getting into a debate, into a fight, altercation, whatever you may run into something come out, in which you may have people watching. You don't have no hopes of him being guided. But there's other people that are watching you to debate. And it may come a time when you have to, you may have to destroy a person. You may have to break him in half. You can't do that unless you have a strong base of proof and evidence. Before we get into what the ulama say, if we get into what the hadith means, I'm going to quote 10 hadith on you. 10 from my memory. How many can you quote to support your position? 1 or 2. The people on the onlookers, who are they going to look to for the strong argument? Without a doubt. There's no doubt about that. And if you look at the Quran or Kareem, Allah Azza wa Jalla, He mentions this ayat over and over and over again, more. آمنتم من في السماء آمنتم أإله مع الله أإله مع الله أمن جعل الأرض, one created the heaven, one sent out water, one does this. Surah An-Naml, Allah mentions in 27 chapters of the Quran several proofs to prove that He is one and He deserves to be worshipped alone. And He asks the mushrikeen question after question after question. In other words, this style of bombarding with dalil is Quran style. Okay, and Prophet also would do that. He would ask the companions several issues. One example of this is the hadith in which the young man came to the Prophet and he said, Ya Rasulullah, idhani fi an-nazni. He said, O Messenger of Allah, allow me to make zina. Say it's permissible and I'll go make zina. What did the Prophet do? Did he say zina is haram? You can go to the hellfire? He asked him a question. Atuhibbuhu li ummik? Atuhibbuhu li ukhtik? And he asked him 3, 4, 5 times. Your mother? Would you like it for your sister? Would you like it for your aunt? Would you like it? Would you like it? Would you like it? And every time the young man says, Ya la, wallahi ya Rasulullah, ja'ani Allah fi dhalik. He says, no, by Allah, I swear, O Messenger of Allah, may Allah make me your ransom. I would never love for anyone who makes zina of my mother. He says, وَلَا النَّاسُ يُحِبُّونَهُ لِأُمَّهَاتِهِمْ. Nor do the people like for their mothers. And he asked them again, he asked them again. So the point that we're trying to get to is that a talib al-ilm has to stack up proof and evidence. One evidence is insufficient. One dalil is insufficient. I know that Ramadan is a no. You're a student of knowledge, not a layman Muslim anymore. You must have 10 to 20 proofs for one issue. And you must be able to quote those proofs and evidences because you never know when you need to. As I said, you can't go home and say, oh, let me get my weapon, let me come back. Nah. Walking down the street, someone try to mug you, you have to defend yourself. You see a lady getting mugged, you have to help her diffuse that situation. And you have to be ready, you have to be prepared. And it's the whole concept of studying and being a student of hadith. Being a student of hadith is that you memorize the sunnah and you walk around with the sunnah. So this here is the proof that fasting month of Ramadan is mandatory. The second benefit of giving us hadith is that it's only mandatory upon seeing the hilal, or that which takes the place of seeing the hilal. Either actually seeing the moon, or that which takes the place of seeing the moon. Okay, don't rush, we're going to get into some other issues with regards to the calculation. It's going to come in the next hadith. The Prophet ﷺ then says, if the sky is cloudy, we benefit from this, is that the one who controls the heavens and the earth is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and not the slaves. Because he says, ghumma. What do we call this in the Arabic language? Mabni lil-majhul. What do we call it? Mabni lil-majhul. We said mubalagha and takfir, right? You don't say mubalagha في صفات الله. نقول طيب هل نقول مبني للمجهول هنا؟ هل نقول مجهول؟ من الذي يعني جعل السماء وخلقها؟ فماذا نقول؟
كيف الله مجهول؟
هذا السؤال.
مجهول
ما لم يسمى فاعله. ما لم يسمى فاعله. طيب. المهم, this proves that Allah is the one who's in charge and He's in creator. Because it says if it's cloudy or cloudy, meaning you don't make it cloudy. You don't have control over the clouds and the heavens and earth. Another benefit we can take from the hadith kamal is that in Islam, there is nothing wrong with having an excuse. Everything is not in your ability to do as a human being. It's okay. But an excuse doesn't, one thing that you can't do doesn't lead to two things. Because the Prophet says, if it's cloudy, then estimate the days of Sha'ban. And he didn't say if it's cloudy, don't fast the month of Ramadan. So some Muslims say, I can't do this. Okay, fine. The job does not allow you, sister, to have on a full hijab. And you have to work, you have no other income, no other resources. You don't have a husband, your father's not taking care of you, whatever. Doesn't mean take off your khimar. The job will allow you to wear your khimar, but you can't wear the full hijab. So it doesn't mean just go and take your khimar off and then wear tight clothes and perfume and lipstick and makeup. The job didn't tell you to do that, but it told you that you couldn't wear a robe. If she has an excuse, that's between her and Allah. Between her and her Lord. If she has to go out and work in this place, okay, fine. But it doesn't mean put on lip gloss and makeup and tight pants. The job did not request you to do that. They don't care how loose or baggy your pants are. If you want to wear a long sleeve or a short sleeve, that's your own problem, but you can't wear a robe to the job. You understand the point? This is very important Islamic concept. When there's necessity, when there's incapability, that's one thing. That's one thing, but it doesn't mean that there's two things or three things. As the fuqaha say, الضرورة تقدر بقدرها. الضرورة تقدر بقدرها. Necessity stops at necessity. It was obligatory for you to eat a small piece of swine to stay alive, not to starve to death. It doesn't mean that you can feast and gorge on swine. And that's a mas'ala, it's a real issue of fiqh that the ulama differ over. When it's permissible to eat something that's haram, or to drink something that's haram, is it permissible to eat to your full? Or just a necessity? Different views. But the point that we're trying to get to is that the necessity stops there. Okay? You had to get the riba, you had to get a loan because you were in a very serious situation. It doesn't mean that you had to get the biggest house on the hill and the widest car. I had to get a car. What was I supposed to do? I had to take a tayyib. That's one thing. Doesn't mean that you get a Muslim. It's a very important benefit that we can take from this hadith. An excuse in Islam doesn't mean weakness. Doesn't mean continue to disobey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Another benefit we get from this hadith is that certain sciences, other than the sciences of Islam, are okay, as long as they don't go against Islam. Whether they are means of assistance in understanding and implementing Islam. Because the Prophet ﷺ, he says, فَقْهُرُ لَهُ. He says, make an estimation. If you don't know how to count, if you don't know basic arithmetic, how can you fast properly? So there's nothing wrong with going to school to be a mathematician. There's nothing wrong with that. An accountant, alhamdulillah, those things are needed. And it's impossible to estimate your zakat, your mirath, inheritance, all different things pertain to other sciences outside of the religion, okay? So there's nothing wrong with learning things from the dunya. Rather, you cannot properly understand everything unless you have knowledge of things from the dunya. Right, so now we have an issue here which comes up every single year in all communities, the local sighting or the international sighting. Do we go with Saudi Arabia, do we go with Yemen, Turkey, Russia, or do we go with the moon, or who saw the moon in Alabama or Houston, or so on and so forth? This is an issue which the scholars of Islam differ over. Some of them say, alaykum salam wa rahmatullah, that if there's a different time zone, there's a different location, then you go with your local sighting. And others say, you go with the international sighting, because there's only one moon. And if trustworthy Muslims see it, then the month of Ramadan has come. And the ironic thing is that both of these scholars use this hadith as their proof. The Prophet ﷺ, he says, لا تصوموا حتى تروا الهلال. Do not fast. That's clear. Don't fast until you see the moon. Some scholars that use the hadith to prove is that you have to see it yourself, meaning the people of your community, of your location in the Muslims. So we don't go with the Saudi sighting if we see it ourselves. Okay? Another scholars say that this hadith is an opposite, is a proof against them. Once the moon has been spotted by trustworthy Muslims, the month of Ramadan has entered. There are no two moons. There are no two moons. So this is a very important and rich hadith to show us that there are many reasons behind khilaf of the ulama. Why is there a difference of opinion? He's a deviant, he doesn't follow the sunnah. Abu Hanifa's, his madhab is totally batil, some brothers say. His Hanafi, khalas. Default. Especially a lot of brothers from Guyana, unfortunately. A lot of brothers, they say this. They hear the term Hanafi, bid'ah, khalas. It's already false. And that's wrong. It's khulud, it's extremism. They hear this term, it's automatically correct. It's wrong. Imam Abu Hanifa, rahimahullah, or any other scholar of Islam, as Shaykh Islam ibn Taymiyyah clearly mentioned, في رفع الملام عن أئمة الأعلام, he says there was never any man, there was never a scholar of the Sunnah who intentionally went against the Sunnah. Intentionally went against the dalil, lie. But there's different understanding of the proof. The proof may have not reached him. Maybe he was in a different place, maybe it was a different reason. Maybe he had another who thought it was stronger. So this is an example of how one hadith can be used in two opposite ways. So those Muslims who say that we spotted the moon in Texas and we're going to fast, they fasted the day before the Saudi sighting. It is improper to say you're misguided. Rather, you are misguided because you're ignorant and you don't understand that you're ignorant. That's the worst type of ignorance. That's the worst type of ignorance. That's the poet say, إِذَا كُنْتَ لَا تَدْرِي فَتِلْكَ مُصِيبَةٌ. He says, if you don't know, then that's a problem. That's a musibah. It's a calamity. وَإِذَا كُنْتَ تَدْرِي, and if you do know that you don't know, فَالْمُصِيبَةُ. Or he says, وَإِذَا كُنْتَ لَا تَدْرِي بِأَنَّكَ لَا تَدْرِي فَالْمُصِيبَةُ أَعْظَمُ. And if you don't know that you're ignorant, it's even worse. Okay, so it's very easy to point the finger at the next man and say that they're misguided, or they're ignorant, or they're not upon the sunnah, they're outside of this or that. But you yourself, can you take the finger being pointed back at you? So that's a different story. Now I'll accept that I have problems and issues and mistakes, not best. But can you accept that? Are you willing to go under the microscope? I'll take one of your lectures and listen to 5 minutes of it and point out 100 mistakes and just in your Arabic. Would they accept that? First thing they say is what? Why are you talking about the brothers? No, it's a reality. It's a reality. Why are you finding fault in the brothers, Yaqi? Stuff for law, you find fault in the people of Sunnah. Play it. But you can find fault in others. And that's incorrect. So there's different understandings of dalil. Rather, the people of knowledge mention that if a person makes a statement or act of kufr, and they do it based off of interpretation, what they think is right, then you cannot declare them to be disbelievers or non-Muslims. You cannot declare them to be disbelievers or non-Muslims. And a perfect example of this is the hadith of the man who said to his sons, he says, when I die, cremate my body, burn my body, take the ashes to the coast and throw them and spread them out into the wind, into the sea. He says, فَإِنْ قَدَرَ اللَّهُ فَإِنْ قَدَرَ اللَّهُ عَلَيَّ. He says, because if Allah seizes me, He'll punish me so terribly. If Allah has the ability to resurrect me, that's kufr. That's doubting Allah's lordship. That's doubting Allah's power to bring him back to resurrection. So Allah Azza wa Jalla, He asked him the question. He says, what made you say this? What caused you to do this? He says, خَشْيَتَكِ يَا رَبِّ. He says, fear of you, Allah, I was afraid. And the man didn't go to hellfire. You understand the point? So that's the issue of kufr. Statement of kufr. We put the brakes on if he did it based off of something that he thought, like, what do you think about a mistake of a trivial issue, of an issue, of a modern day issue, something that's not kufr? What is the case for now? Is it more of an excuse, more respect, more brakes put on, or we speed to say, come on, let's guide it. You heard what he said in the lecture? He's bad, bid'ah, innovation. Don't give him salam, don't sit in his class, don't speak to him. He's not invited in our masjid. Khalas, he's to the hellfire. But he said something, maybe, he said it, he's going to take khalas. What if Kamal had a proof? What if he knew of other ulama who said something that I don't? How can that? So we have to benefit these things from this hadith ikhwan. The Prophet says, fast when you see the moon. And the ulama, some of them understood it to mean this, and others understood it to mean that. So as long as the person is qualified to do this, and he has sincere intention, which is between him and Allah, we cannot say he's misguided. But we say we see differently. We see that the local sighting is better than the Saudi sighting. We see the Saudi sighting, hakada, don't keep your finger, use your finger for tashahhud. Use your finger for tashahhud. Tahiyyatu lillahi wa salawat. Don't use your finger to point into the next man's face. Because it's easy. What did Bruce Lee say? Boards don't punch back. He said, boards don't punch back. You can punch a board as hard as you want. But the board hits your back, is a different story. Okay? And from the greatest virtues of the scholars of the past, especially those who dealt with critiquing and criticizing people, is that they were open for criticism themselves. They were open, they welcomed it. Give me my mistakes, tell me something I did wrong, jazakallahu khairan. As for the people today, Ali, they stay busy with criticism day and night. The moment, and I quote, the moment you criticize them, become sensitive and touchy. That's not fair. And let alone, that's not the way of the ulama. They criticize and also take criticism. And you cannot be a thorough boxer until you can do what? Take a punch. If you don't have a solid chin, you can never be a champion. Is this not the case? You need to go any further on Faz?
Nope.
Sonny, listen, and
Leave that for the travelers.
He's a great champion until you met him. You knocked him out the first round twice. So you have to be able to take what you give. So the Prophet ﷺ says, fast when you see the moon, and break your fast when you see the moon. Some scholars understand it to mean local sighting. Other scholars understand it to mean whenever, not just Saudi. International. International. That's another issue. Saudi is just exclusive to see the moon, no one else can see it? Moving on to the next hadith. Welcome.
حديث ابن عمر قال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم الشهر هكذا وهكذا وهكذا لا يعني 30 لا يعني 30
ما في
يعني 30 ثم قال وهكذا 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 يعني 29 يقول مرة 30 ومرة 29.
أحسنت جزاك الله خير. Hadith number 654, narrated Ibn Umar radiallahu anhuma. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam says, "Ash-shahru hakadha wa hakadha wa hakadha." He said, the month is like this, like that, and like this. And then he said, and the month is also like this, like that, and like this. In other words, 29. يقول مرة. Once the month could be 30 days, and another time the month would be 29 days. In other words, Abir, the Prophet counted on his finger. He used his hand to count a number of days. The Arabs, they have a system of counting in which they move their fingers and their knuckles and the knots in their knuckles to make a certain amount, a certain number. Okay, this is known before Islam. They would count with their hands. Even some people, you see them today, in the Prophet's masjid or outside the Prophet's in Medina. Many people overseas, especially older, they don't make tasbih like this. SubhanAllah, they don't do that. Not even that. They count. They use their fingers and they go down and up. The hadith states that the Prophet ﷺ informs us, or he used sign language, quote unquote. Okay? He showed us that the month can be 29 days and the month can be 30 days. Now, one of the benefits we can take from this hadith is what, Ali? What's the benefit we can give from this hadith?
There can be different amount of days in a month.
There can be different amount of days. Right. That's the benefit. That's not what I want. I want something else from this hadith. And what mean? La. What did the Prophet ﷺ do? Ash-shahru hakada wa hakada wa hakada.
Examples by.
I said from the ways of teaching, some doing something physical. It doesn't always have to be verbal. Okay? In other words, to use any beneficial means to spread the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. Any beneficial means. As long as it is not against Islam. As long as it's not haram. As long as it doesn't go against the sunnah, then we use that thing. And there is no proof required. Rather, the proof is for the one who says that it's haram. You can't use a projector screen. You can't do this. You can't read from an iPad. You can't use a microphone. You can't go to this college, to this masjid. Why not? That is the question. Not as some ignorance to say, oh, you can't go this, you can't do this, because you don't have no proof. You don't have no dalil. When was it from the practice of the people to do that? Ya akhi, subhanallah. Is this a wasila or is this a ghaya? Is this the road or is this the destination? The destination is tawqifiyya. The destination, the goal, has to be from Kitab and Sunnah. The act of worship has to be Kitab and Sunnah. But the road, the means, that is left open. The Prophet ﷺ, when the companions asked him about how to call to the prayer, some of them said, let's use a horn. Some of them said, let's light a fire. Some of them said, let's use a drum. The Prophet ﷺ did not say the horn is bad innovation. He didn't say the fire is this. He didn't say there's no proof in it. He said, I dislike it because of the Jews, because of the Christians, because of the fire worshippers. Call the event. In other words, if the Jews did not necessarily use the horn, it wasn't so much of a bad idea. So we have ghaya and we have wasila. The ghaya is the destination. The prayer that you're making. What prayer is it? It has to be established in the Kitab and Sunnah. How do you get to that prayer? You want to drive? You want to walk? You want to use a microphone to call the adhan? A bullhorn? Whatever you use to call the adhan. As long as it calls to that what? That established destination. The destination has to be established. How do you give dawah? That's in the Kitab and Sunnah. But in the means, that's up to you. You want to use an iPad mini, you want to use it. There's that. As long as it isn't haram. As long as the Prophet did not say don't do it. So the Prophet here, he used his hands. And there are many other hadith in which he uses his hands too. Another benefit we get from this hadith is the permissibility of interpreting the Sunnah and explaining the hadith of the Prophet. Whereas the narrator, whether it's one of the companions or not, he said, yani, in other words. In other words. Another benefit we take from this, as Ali said, is that an Islamic month, a lunar month, is not necessarily 30 or 31 days. It could be 29 days, it could be 30 days. And this hadith, among some others, are clear proofs that it's incorrect to use the calculation. It's incorrect to use the calendar. And that is because a calendar is set in stone, it's fixed. Sahih? If you look for the year 2025, is it already set, made there? Ramadan may not be 39 days. I mean, it may not be 30 days. Maybe 29 days. May not be 31 days. How many days in the month of July?
31.
31. So therefore, the religion of Islam is based on the lunar calendar, as we clearly said. Right. Next hadith.
حديث ابن عمر رضي الله عنهما عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم أنه قال: إنا أمية لا نكتب ولا نحسب الشهر هكذا وهكذا، يعني مرة 29 ومرة 30.
والذي بعده
حديث أبي هريرة رضي الله عنه قال: قال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم، أو قال أبو القاسم صلى الله عليه وسلم: صوموا لرؤيته أو وأفطروا لرؤيته، فإن غبي عليكم فأكملوا عدة شعبان 30.
Hadith number 655, and the book that we're reading for those who came to the late is called wal-Marjan fi muttafaq alayhi shaykhan. Hadith in which the hadith that were selected, collected by Bukhari and Muslim, have been placed in one book of the author Muhammad Fuad al-Bukhari rahimahullah. Pearls and corals. Hadith number 655 from the book of fasting, he says, narrated Ibn Umar radiallahu anhuma, that the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, what did he say? In English. What's the translation of 655?
The Prophet ﷺ said, indeed, we are an unlettered ummah, a nation, an unlettered nation. We do not write and we do not
count.
We do not write and we do not count.
Or no arithmetic, yani.
We do not count. The month is like this and like that, meaning, yani, marratan. One time it could be 29 days, and another it could be 30 days.
Hadith number 655 basically means that during the time of the Prophet ﷺ, there were many people who were illiterate. Many people didn't know how to write. Okay? They didn't have certain skills, certain types of knowledge. As the Prophet says, Inna ummah, we. In other words, the majority. There were some of the companions who could write, some of the companions who could read, but in most cases it was widespread illiteracy. Okay? And this is one of the reasons why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent down the Quran to the Arabs. And that is because there were people that were given to memory. There were people that were given to the oral tradition. And there lies no doubt. If you want to memorize the Quran, it's easier to read it, write it, or to hear it, and repeat after your teacher. Which one?
Here.
Without a doubt. There's a rhythm to the Quran. There's a style, a recitation of the Quran, and there's a wisdom behind that. So therefore, when different nations had books and paper and all types of things, those Bedouin sheep herders, camel herders, they didn't know, they couldn't write. But they could remember, and they could tell you their fathers, and the names of their fathers' fathers, and the names of the fathers of the fathers of their fathers. They could go on and mention it all the way back to Ismail. They had memory. They memorized qasaid, poems, over 1,000 lines. They could tell you easily, but he couldn't write a letter, 2 letters. So we see that there's hikmah and different things, okay? And then even to this day, the Muslims, the memory of the Muslims. If you go to Jami Islamiyah, you go to City College or Baruch, wherever you may go, it's incomparable with the amount of information that you're going to memorize. County College, wherever you go. The information that you, Phoenix, all right? Wherever you go to school, the amount that you're going to memorize, names, dates, texts, is like night and day. And then this is a tradition that has continued to the Muslims. How many people have memorized the Bible by heart? Anybody know of any who follow the Bible? Maybe one or two, maybe. What is the Bible? They don't even agree on what it is. They don't. New version, this version, disciples, translation, Hebrew, Arabic. They don't agree on it. We know there was a book that Allah sent down. It was called the Injil. Allah sent down a book called the Injil. There's no doubt about that. We believe in that. But what the people read and have today in print, is that what Allah sent down? Let alone can they even memorize it. How do you memorize the Quran? This young child in Malaysia, this old man in Timbuktu, this student in New York City, this person in South America, in Yemen, all over the world. Millions of people have memorized the Quran by heart. And this goes to show you the miraculous nature of that book. That it being sent down in itself was a mu'jizah. Was a major sign from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So therefore, just because a person can't read or write doesn't mean that they're stupid, doesn't mean that they're slow. Or as a wise man said to me, he said people from up north, they think people down south are slow because they talk slower. It's true. Many people do. Many citizens, they think this. Or if somebody comes from a country, a foreign country, Caribbean, you be Guyana, these people are slow because they have an accent, they talk funny. Some of the most cunning people I know are from Guyana. Congo ill, slippery, elusive, can't get him in the corner. So therefore, he said, well, I found out that people up north, they're no faster than people down south, they just talk faster. But they're actually slower. So the point that we're trying to get to, don't judge a book by its cover. Don't judge a book by its cover. The next hadith, hadith number 656, narrated Abu Hurairah, that the Prophet ﷺ always says, oh, or perhaps Abu Qasim. In other words, the narrator was unsure. Whether Abu Hurairah said the Prophet, or whether he said Abu Qasim. Set fast when you see it, and break your fast when you see it. If it's cloudy, or if you're held back from seeing it, then complete the month of Sha'ban in a full 30-day length. In a full 30-day length. Top of your day. Hold on.
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Ashhadu an la أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله
Sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. How much time we have? Is it? 5 minutes. 5 minutes. Inshallah. Hadith, similar to the previous hadith, shows us the following points. Firstly, the obligation of fasting in Ramadan, and it's based off of seeing the hilal, or that which takes the place of seeing the hilal. And another benefit we give this in Islam is that what? If you can't do something, then you do the substitute of that thing. Okay? And there's no excuse to leave off what Allah has commanded you to do. If you can't do the actual thing, then do a substitute. Okay? If you can't see the moon, then use calculation. Faqdu, estimate the amount of days in the past month. As for a calendar that's 5 years, 10 years, 100 years ahead, then that's a different issue. That's a problem. Okay? Right. We'll stop here with the These are the main benefits. There are many other benefits that we can take from this hadith and issues. We don't have enough time to get into right now. Maybe somebody wants to comment or question or something, say something. Now is the time. If not, we'll stop. Alhamdulillah. Hold on.
So the one who sees the moon or spots the moon, can he fast before the people fast?
Question says, one who sees the moon and spots the moon before the people, is he allowed to fast? We say it's a yes or no answer. It depends who the person is. It depends where he lives. If he lives in a Muslim state or Muslim country or Arab country, whatever you want to call it, when you get into know political science, okay? What is a Muslim country? I'm him. If there's a leader of the country that he has follows and obeys and so on and so forth, that's one thing. As for if he lives in a place in which he's by himself, that's another thing. If he lives in a place in which there's no cohesive body of Muslims, that's a different situation. Does he know what the moon looks like? Does he know when to look for it, how to look for it? Has he been trained to look for the moon? That's another thing. Okay? And don't think looking for the moon is you just look in the sky. Nah. There's a skill to it. And it's a specific time that you have to look for it. And if you don't look in that special, small, allotted window, the moon will vanish. And you'll say, oh, we didn't see it. Okay? Trust me. Take some skill. Take some practice. People come from the city. It's even harder. And if you go up somewhere and you sit for 1 hour, sit for 4 straight hours until 12 a.m., that's one thing. So you have that type of patience. Okay, now other factors that play in not seeing the moon. Different lights and all types of things. You'll be shocked. So there is a skill to it. Okay, and it's one of the reasons why some Muslims choose to follow the international sighting, especially from Saudi Arabia. Not exclusively, but I said especially. Because in Saudi Arabia and other countries in the Gulf, they've been looking for the moon for years, for generations before Islam. They have knowledge about the cycles of the moon, looking for it. People come from Bedouins, okay? And they look for the moon every single month, okay? So that's another issue in America and other places. People want to look for the moon once a month. If you don't look for the moon once a month, why not look for the moon the other months and calculate the Hijri calendar, okay? And as some of the people now has mentioned, using the Viking calendar, which is what I like to call it, okay? Using that Mushrik calendar is a means of imitating the disbelievers. Their days in which they worship certain gods, and their months that were named after gods and idols and spirits and goddesses and things like this. Now, we're not saying it's haram to use the Viking calendar if you have to, go to work, get paid. You want your check on Thursday, huh? Thursday, the day in which you worship Thor, whatever do that. Worship the god of lightning. You can't tell them Khamis. They said, what's Khamis? I thought Khamis is what you're wearing. And I said, no, Khamis. What? Like a house of some god, Ra, things like this. Saturday, Sunday, the day when you worship the sun. Monday, the day when you worship the moon. Muslims should take pride in their calendar. The calendar in which the best of creation. When he went to Medina, Umar radiallahu anhu, years later started that process of calculation, the Tariq al-Hijri. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. So it depends on who the person is and when and where. Allah Alam. And that's the other. Any other questions before we stop? Any questions from the sisters? Anything from other steps? No.
What type of person sees the moon, for example? What's the characteristics of the person who sees the moon?
The person who is to see the moon and whose testimony we are to accept and act upon, first of all, it shouldn't be just one person. That's first. As many of the people of knowledge mentioned, it should be at least 2. Secondly, they should be people who are religious, or pious, or of age, or sane, who have good practice of the deen, and people who are qualified to see and look for the moon. Last thing, because I know you're going to make iqamah, alhamdulillah, this is the sunnah of the masjids, we're always rushed. We do the class, salah, namaz, whatever you want to call it, rosa, has to be done quick, right? Whatever name you want to call it, okay? the hadith about seeing the Prophet ﷺ in a dream. Many Muslims say, I saw the Prophet ﷺ in a dream. One brother told me in New Jersey, he said, I saw the Prophet in a dream, he came over my house, he ate lunch with me, Allah, maybe. Was you there tonight? No, but I heard something. Like, maybe deeper. Is that many people don't know what the Prophet ﷺ looks like. They don't know his actual description. So if you don't know what the Prophet ﷺ looks like in detail, you think that you saw him in a dream, but you really didn't see him. But you thought you did. Okay? So therefore, similar to the moon. You may think that's the moon, or you may think it's going to come at this time and that time, and it's not the proper time, not the proper day. So it has, the person has to be qualified, has to be learned with regards to that basic skill of looking for the moon. Wallahu a'lam. We'll stop here. Unless Ustad Zakaria has something he wants to add. جزاكم الله خيرا سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك.